Hello, this is Gabriel Garcia de la Cadena. I am here recording a video on behalf of one of my class assignments for history. And today we are going to be discussing the Greeks and Egyptians, more specifically on the female divine, the male divine, and the tricksters. We're going to be discussing about each one individually, and then at the end, we're going to talk about how they have affected the societies, the Greeks and Egyptian societies. So first we're going to start with the female divine. Now, Athena is the Greek goddess of war and wisdom. Now, she's kind of, well, she is war, and there is another Greek god of war, Ares. She's more a bit of an opposite to Ares, whereas Ares is more bloodlust, fighting, just all this thing. Athena is more of a very soft, very wisdom and focus on attacking the battle, not with just overpowering and bloodshed, but in a more of a smart way. She's usually depicted as this, majestic woman, but she has this beautiful, stern face. She usually is always in statues wearing a full set of armor and holding a spear. Throughout the stories, when we hear about Athena come up, she actually helped many of the Greek greatest heroes. So we're talking about Hercules, Perseus, stuff like those, the Odyssey and the trials that Hercules went through. She ended up there's a story about her and Poseidon wanting to be the representatives or the patron of Athens, what would become Athens, and the first king there made a contest, basically saying which one of you is going to provide more for us if we make you the patron of our city. Poseidon ended up releasing opening up through his trident, and it opened up the mountains and allowed the ocean to flow through, and it filled up some temple, and basically it was like an offering, a constant offering, and that was about it. Athena didn't do anything crazy. What she did was she actually planted an olive tree, and the king chose Athena over the water. And the reason being for that is the king recognized that the water wouldn't do much for his people, but an olive tree he can use to make oil, have food, and various other things. So he chose Athena, and that's when the city, and that's the story of how the city of Athens was named Athens, and why the main goddess they worshipped was Athena. She was born apparently from the forehead of Zeus after Zeus ate what would have been her mother. That's about it to talk about for Athena. Next, we have Sekhmet, I believe it's pronounced. Now, she is the goddess of war, destruction, plagues, and healing, which is a bit weird when you think about it. She's both healing and of plagues. She's also the daughter of the sun god Ra, which is one of the most powerful gods, which is the most powerful god in the Egyptian pantheon, but we'll get more into that in the future. She's feared actually very much because of her bloodlust. There's a story. She was feared for her bloodlust. Sekhmet was also known as the wrath of Ra, meaning that, and the reason why she had gotten that was because Ra was at one point very upset with the human race, and Ra sent Sekhmet to go attack the humans because of how evil they were. And when Ra watched her unleash her fury on mankind, he was so disgusted and just surprised by the amount of blood being spilled and everything. It was just a horrible time that Ra had to actually trick her daughter and put her to sleep to cause her bloodlust to subside. It's crazy to think that, because Ra was so angry at humankind, he wanted them destroyed, but after seeing what Sekhmet did, it caused him to say, hey, that's enough. So you can only imagine what Sekhmet was doing during that time. Now, another interesting thing, though, is that a lot of people worship her, though, is because they believe she has healing and protective powers. And she's had 2 cities in Egypt dedicated to her for worship. Uh, and the reason why she is worshipped is because she is believed that she could solve any problem mankind ever faced. So diseases, they believe that she could cure any disease, any ailment, just anything. Any issues you had, she could help. So similarities between the two is that they were both dedicated, that they both had cities dedicated to them for worship, which is interesting. They were both the daughters of the head god / leader of the pantheon, of their pantheons. Both were known as goddesses of war, and they were both worshipped because they could help mankind's problem. Athena was more set for giving wisdom to mankind during times of war or everyday life sometimes, whereas Sekhmet was more for helping mankind with disease and ailments. Either way, both were believed to, if you worship them, they would help you. Next, we have the male Devine. So the first god we're going to start off is with Zeus. He was the king of the Olympian gods. He's believed to be able to control the weather. He gave omens, and he gave out justice to the human race. So he was the judge of humans. He had many children. There are so many stories that have started because of Zeus mating with the women or humans or with other gods. Now, he's also the oldest oracle we have in Greece is actually dedicated to him, which is very nice because it shows that he is they still see him as the original. However, what's interesting, though, is there's actually not a lot of festivals or many other things actually dedicated to Zeus. So it begs the question, if he's so important, why isn't he worshipped more? However, while he was also the one who dished out justice, he was also someone who was a peacemaker. He organized one of the peace between a beef going on between some gods and goddesses. And the way that Zeus is normally depicted as usually a muscular, older gentleman with a beard and always carrying a lightning bolt. Next, we have the Egyptians, which is Ra. Ra is the sun god of the Egyptians. He's considered the most powerful god, and he is considered the creator of Egypt. He's the head of the Egyptian pantheon, and his job as well is to cast judgment down on humans. Another interesting thing that I forgot to put in here was that actually some believe that his worship is probably one of the oldest in technicality versions of monotheism, which is the worship of one god. There were many parts of time to period in Egypt where they only worshipped Ra. So it was very interesting that when that came up, obviously he is someone who's very, very important, in contrast with Zeus, who seems to not have as much dedicated to him, even though he's so powerful and involved in so much in Greek mythology. Now, the similarities between the two is that they both are the rulers of their pantheons. They are both in charge of their pantheons. Zeus is in control of the Olympians, Ra is in charge of the Egyptians. Both have been tasked with punishing humanity. Zeus tried to punish the world with a flood for punishment, and Ra sent Sekhmet to carry out his wrath. Interestingly enough, they both have also took pity on humanity as well. They are also considered both to be the most powerful within their pantheons. With Ra, there's just no one who matches Ra, it seems like. And in Zeus, there are many stories where those have tried to overthrow Zeus. Even his own children have tried, and they have failed because of how powerful he was. And they both are responsible to giving birth to other gods that are part of the said pantheons they rule. Next, we have the tricksters. First, we're going to start with the Egyptian trickster, Seth. Now, he was referred to as the god of disorder. Some people would recognize him more as maybe the god that protects the death, going to the afterlife. But before that, he was the god of disorder. He actually hated order. And even at one point, it tricked his brother and killed him by locking him in a coffin, nailing him in a coffin, and throwing him in the Nile River. And after, his brother was, I believe, Osiris, who was known for order. So when Osiris was killed, he caused the world to go into complete disorder and dismay, and he loved it. He loved all that. However, after Seth was defeated, the Ra actually adopted him as his son-in-law. And then after that made him in charge of the underworld in terms of protecting the dead and help them go to the afterlife. He's normally depicted as this like weird dog-like creature. And it's actually, he's one of my favorite looking Egyptian gods. I think he looks pretty cool. Next, we have Ati. I think it's Ati. And she's the Greek goddess of mischief. She's this, she's a goddess, but she's depicted more as a demigoddess who is somewhat of a spirit. You know, she has very vague origin stories. Some of you depict her of not having feet, which is interesting. But she's a trickster in that sense. She at one point tricks Zeus into making a promise to humans that on a certain day, when a certain offspring of Zeus is born, they will be a great ruler. Now, when Zeus made this promise, she had a plan. She tricks him into making this promise, and then did this thing where she forced Hercules not to be born in time. And another one of Zeus's seeds was born first. And this ruined this whole plan that Zeus had planned up, and actually really angered Zeus. And it was enough to anger him that she was actually cast out of the Olympia, or the Olympian mountain. And then she has to spend the rest of her life on Earth, where she wanders the earth causing problems, mischief, disorder, just messing with people's heads. She's also the sister to many other gods who are also tricksters, which is a interesting family. I can't imagine what family reunions are like there. And like I said before, she actually delayed Hercules' birth in order just to screw over Zeus. She didn't do it even to get revenge or anything. She just did it to mess with Zeus, which is pretty intense. Some stuff like Loki does in Marvel. So the similarities between the two is, what's sad is there's the problem with the Seth and the Greeks is they have similarities, which is they both create disorder. They both do not like order in the world, and they both trick fellow gods in order to mess with them, in order to mess with them. The world, I mean, to mess with the world. The reason why there couldn't be more similarities is because with Ati, all her different siblings who are tricksters, they each represent a certain type of trickery that do on humans. Hers is just mischief and a little bit of disorder. Some of her siblings actually do things a bit closer to Seth, actually, I believe. And so if I were to do all of the family there, I would have definitely a lot more connections we could give. But I believe Ate matched most with Seth due to the fact that she now apparently roams the earth causing issues for humanity, whereas Seth wanted to did that before he was banished to the underground. Now, the way these stories affect the Greek and the Egyptian societies is very interesting. You got these on the Greek side, you got these stories of the gods. They're used to answer these questions that couldn't be answered at the time, such as, how's creation work? They always blame the bad weather or bad omens on the gods. There's a thunderstorm is attacking, Zeus must be angry. Or they see would it be like a crow or a bird flying to a tree and kill itself? It would be a bad omen. The gods are trying to warn me about something. There's even this part you can see, especially with Ate, that there's this idea that if you've been tricked into doing something bad enough or anything, it must be the goddess who did it to you. You know, it looks like some responsibility on one's actions can be shifted to the gods. Now, I don't know how much of that was implemented, but that's a vibe that's being given when you tell these stories. A lot of these stories have caused people to worship the gods just so they can get a better afterlife and protection in the afterlife. You know, that they really don't have any other reason. And another thing is that a lot of cities were built for them. They worshipped all the gods, but each city had like a singular god they focused on. So just Athens was mostly Athena. Troy was Poseidon, if I remember correctly. It was either Poseidon. It was Poseidon. And then Sparta mostly worshipped Ares. And so these cities were based around these ideas. So Spartan had Spartans, warriors, and they're just a city just full of people bred for war. Athens had a lot more people with wisdom, knowledge, and everything, such as just like their goddess they worship, Athena, things like that. Now, in Egyptian society, it's very similar in terms of what they're doing, but there's a few differences. These stories end up helping them understand the world around them, such as why the sun rises, why it sets, stuff like that, explain stuff like that. They prayed and worshiped for just so they can have blessings and a better life. There's a thing that worshiping doesn't cleanse your heart and soul or anything like that. You're trying to get a better life, blessings and favors from the gods. You know, at the end of the day, when you go down, they weigh your heart from this feather. And, it's all based on your actions in the real world. Do you carry this guilt and horribleness? It's going to make your heart heavier. You don't want to be heavy. That is so, you can't just cleanse yourself. There's a lot of definitely self-responsibility. Another thing is they have entire cities dedicated to single gods. They do, such as I mentioned with Sekhmet. In those two cities where they worship her, there is a higher group of doctors / priests. Many priests took on who singularly worshipped Sekhmet or dedicated Sekhmet. They were also doubled as doctors. So if you had, let's say, a cut that was infected or some disease, you would go to those cities to try to get treatment. And like I said, overall, they seem to feel they have more control over their lives. They don't seem to have this idea of there's a spirit going around making you do bad things. That's why you did that terrible thing. Or there's I need to, every second of my life, feel I need to pray to gods before I do something. These gods were more seen as you try to pray to gain a little bit of favor just so you can be blessed to have a easier going life. And that's about all. The end. That's all I got to say about the male, the female divine, and these tricksters. They're very interesting. And actually, if you study more into it, what's crazy is when Alexander took over Egypt, you find out that when these people discussed and talked to each other, they actually believed that they both worshiped the same god. Some of their gods were the same gods. It's very interesting to see how much mixture between the two happened after Alexander. You can see through the art, through statues and stuff, how much the Greek statues back then were influenced by Egyptian statues. There's some Greek statues from back then you can see where you legit would think they're Egyptian. They're not. So this is kind of why I chose these two, was because of just how much, their societies have mixed over time. And that's all thanks to Alexander the Great. Anyway, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.